Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
He joins us via telephone. He, of course, is the editor of naturalnews.com. We post a lot of their great reports at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. I want to get in the short segment into a swine flu pandemic outbreak sweeping through Britain. Even though 70% were vaccinated last year, you have the Canadian studies and government studies in Europe showing that it lowers your immunity by about 50% when you take the H1N1 shot to the regular seasonal flu. Now you don't have a choice. They're combining both. And so I wanted to talk just briefly with Mike Adams about that. Then we're going to come back with the big story here. Homeland Security and U.S. Treasury are involved with the food safety bill invoking Codex, that's UN takeover, harmonization and grants FDA authority to police food safety of foreign nations, kind of like we just discovered that the Drug Enforcement Agency is running around as a global spy agency, non-drug related. This is a global corporate government with the U.S. taxpayer fitting the bill. So that's coming up in the next segment. But let's look at flu season first. Obviously, record low numbers of people took it here last year because of your work and others exposing it as dangerous, which has now been proven by the British Medical Journal, the EU Medical Board, and others. But Mike, now they're back fear-mongering. Tell us about that.
Well, they are fear-mongering as usual, Alex. You're right on target. Even though about 70% of the over 65 population was vaccinated last year in the UK, they're already saying that there's a new pandemic sweeping through the country. Several hundred people are in hospitals now suffering from swine flu. But there's a number that they never tell you. They never say how many of those sick people were vaccinated either this year or last year, because there's something that I call the reinfection rate. And it's a very high number. We don't know how high it is because they won't release the number. They won't do the studies on this. But people who are vaccinated have a weakened immune system when they face future exposure to infectious disease. So I'm sure your listeners are on board with this. They're well informed. They already know this. But the mainstream conventional medical community denies this. They try to imply that if you're vaccinated, it's 100%. You know, you take the shot, you won't get sick. Well, that's a fraud. In fact, it's marketing fraud. If the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually enforced, false marketing regulations against the drug companies, they would go after them for making those claims because vaccines don't work 100%. In fact, if you look at the science, and I've written about it, and you have too, they're about 1% effective if you believe the drug company's own studies. So for every 100 people who are vaccinated, you're going to reduce flu symptoms in about one person.
But that's on the benefit end when you look at the negative effects, as you know, but for those that don't, every major study out there shows vaccines lower overall immunity, including to the things that they're supposedly protecting you from. And the anecdotal on the street is it's common knowledge that I took the flu shot and got the flu. I mean, it's common sense.
Well, exactly. There are dangerous chemicals in these vaccines. There are chemical adjuvants, which are designed to cause an inflammation response of the immune system, but it also causes inflammation of the nervous system. So it's linked to all kinds of nervous system problems. And now here's the big untold story about vaccines is the miscarriages. Women who are getting vaccinated when they have a child.
And that's in the Australian news. Stay there. I want you to recap that, get into the miscarriages. The Australian government's been admitting it. They're trying to cover it up here. The British government admits a 10-fold increase in seizures in children taking it, and they suspended it. Then the government and the media and these pharmacies put out fact sheets they print up saying, no danger. But then if you ask for the actual insert, it says this stuff can kill you. We'll be right back with Mike Adams. Stay with us. You know, we see the headlines, but they don't get any attention. London Guardian comes out. British government admits 10-fold increase in seizures. of children that took the H1N1 shot. They admit it's causing, with the adjuvants, an autoimmune response, brain swelling. Big studies linking it to pancreas failure. It's more than just the corn syrup making the pancreas go out. It's causing autoimmune problems. And in key organs like the brain, the pancreas, the liver, it's bad news. But now it's actually being admitted in Australia, the massive miscarriages. If you go back just 2 years ago, they always said, don't give flu shots to women. Now they say, who are pregnant. Now it's, oh, more important if you're pregnant. They're just practicing murdering people out in the open. Mike Adams, the editor of Natural News, the health ranger, is going to be joining us to talk about that. But the main issue is this food safety bill that's the opposite of a food safety bill, and it ties into the UN. We're going to get where that bill's at, what's happening with it, with Mike Adams. Then we've got two-time Super Bowl winner, 5-time Pro Bowler, I forget, Mark Stepnoski coming on with a big 9/11 truth announcement, along with an engineer who was on Geraldo Rivera and convinced Geraldo that 9/11 could be an inside job. Also, Judge Andrew Napolitano is now saying he doesn't buy the official story. We're on the march, the empire's on the run. But we'll go back to Mike Adams here in just a moment. Going back to Mike Adams, one of the leading alternative health experts out there, very respected. Recapping what you were covering with the 2010 flu hoax, maybe we should briefly look at the 2009, and then that miscarriage information. We're trying to save some lives here. Then we'll shift gears into the UN angle of the food enslavement bill.
Sure. Well, you got to realize that the drug companies, the vaccine manufacturers, they have to fabricate an emergency every year in order to try to get people to take these shots. And so this year, that has failed for the most part. People were not getting vaccinated. People learned their lesson from last year. You know, the big swine flu hoax crashed and burned. And also, people who didn't take the shot, who instead took vitamin B and who took superfoods like your sponsor, Enerfood, and other good foods out there, and who took care of their health, they were fine. They didn't get sick. And a lot of them woke up and they realized, gee, we don't need the vaccines. We're going to be healthier without it. So now, because their propaganda is failing, they have to push it. And that's what they're doing now in the UK. They're pushing it. There are a couple hundred people in the hospitals who are suffering from swine flu, and they're saying everybody needs to get vaccinated. Now they're saying we're going to revisit the vaccinations for children under 5 years old, because they pulled those vaccines previously for children under 5 in their National Health Service because of the potential risks. But now they're saying, well, because of this pandemic breaking out, we got to vaccinate all those kids. And in the U.S., as you hinted, they're now saying we got to vaccinate pregnant women, too, so that their children can be, quote, protected. And by the way, I also saw an article recently saying that they're promoting chemotherapy for pregnant women, saying it's safe to have chemo even when you have a child inside you. This is medical insanity. I mean, how many?
Well, they're setting the precedent. They're setting the precedent to get away with mass murder. And they know what they're doing. They're turning health purely into a death camp, a eugenics camp, as Ted Turner and Bill Gates have admitted. I mean, they mean business. And for those that don't know, I remember just a few years ago, it always said in the inserts, and I've had medical doctors on that have pointed this out, that you never give a pregnant woman a vaccine because they know it causes autoimmune inflammation, not just in the brain, but in the fetus, and triggers massive increases in miscarriages. This time they said women who have babies in their uterus, you're the one that really needs this. I mean, what an outrageous thing they did. And I've seen it. The only country to be admitting it is Australia, where they're admitting this is causing the death of babies.
Well, what's astonishing in all this, if you look across the government bureaucracy, and you know, you had Rand Paul on a couple of weeks ago talking about how these bureaucrats create laws themselves, essentially by creating regulations. They're unelected, but they create regulations like the FDA and the TSA and the DEA and so on. These government bodies, they just blatantly lie. They don't even care about telling the truth. They don't even care if they're caught in a lie. They just keep lying because most people keep buying it. So they throw out the evidence of harm for vaccines. You know, the TSA tries to dismiss any of these complaints about, you know, people reaching down their pants and so on. They say, oh, it's for your own good. I mean, you've been all over that issue, so you know what I'm talking about. But every agency now is just running rampant across our freedoms and across the Constitution. And now with the food safety bill, which I know we're going to talk about here, our food is at risk. They want to control our food. They want to reach into our refrigerators the same way the GSA has been reaching down our pants. That's what's happened. That's what's coming our way now in 2011.
Incredible. Let's get into the Homeland Security tie-in. It was admitted, even in the Wall Street Journal, a record $12 million given in the month of November to get the House to pass the draconian takeover. The $12 million was given completely by mega agribusiness to shut down their competitions. Let's go over it.
All right, well, let's set the frame here for your listeners. The bill proponents said that this is all about food safety. We're going to save 5,000 lives a year. You know, the FDA is a good agency. It's going to protect your food and protect your children and so on. Well, what they didn't tell you is, for example, did you know that E. coli, according to the CDC itself, only kills about 82 Americans a year through food transmission? 82 people. More people are killed by lightning in America than are killed by E. coli. And yet they made this into a big scare story. And that's a CDC statistic, by the way. You can see it right on the government website. And then they hid things in the bill, things that are just now starting to come out. I've been reading this bill, Alex, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, because you know how crazy these bills can get where you have to reference this section and delete that phrase from that paragraph. They're really hard to read. But if you get to this and you actually read it, it turns out that this bill says that the FDA has to put forth, quote, recommendations on whether and how to harmonize requirements under Codex Alimentarius.
It's right there. The open world government standardization. This is, well, I mean, when you see the food safety bill, it's what's in Codex Alimentarius. It's global standardization. Now they're not even denying that. They're openly trying to bring us under this world government to shut down local farms and ranches because people are discovering that we're being poisoned intentionally through the GMO. People are getting the Rockefeller Foundation documents about vaccines having sterilants added. It's all coming out. And as the UN said in the 1996 Food Summit in Beijing, China, they would use food as a weapon. They are using it as a weapon. So it is our duty to start eating non-GMO. It's our duty to start gardens. It's our duty, even if they pass this, to literally rebel. And they're setting up the SWAT teams, everything. They're SWAT teaming the Amish to grow those tomatoes and then let them try to arrest you and further discredit these hordes of demons they've recruited.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most patriotic thing that you could do, perhaps, right now, is to grow your own food and sell it at a local farmer's market. Sell it to your neighbors. Sell it to your community members. You know, grow some honest tomatoes and just sell them. And this is what the government precisely doesn't want you to do. And that's why they've created all of this dark globalist language in this bill. Let me give you some other examples.
Well, stay there. We're going to come back and hit this. We've got to go to break. But think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 1930s, Stalin couldn't crush the poor farmers. He wanted to collectivize them, like Mao later did and killed 60-plus million people. So he said, you can't grow your own gardens anymore, and starved 30-plus million people to death. I mean, they're not playing games. These are hardcore criminals. We'll be right back.